Atheist, a person who disbelieves or lacks belief in the existence of God or gods. Atheism, disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. Pretty simple, right?
You have written that God is a psychotic delinquent invented by mad, deluded people.
No, I didn't say quite that. I said something rather better than that.
Oh, well, please tell us what you said. Please tell us what you said.
Well, I would have to read it from the book.
No, please.
The God of the Old Testament is arguably the most unpleasant character in all fiction. Jealous and proud of it, a petty, unjust, unforgiving control freak, a vindictive, bloodthirsty ethnic cleanser, a misogynistic, homophobic, racist, infanticidal, genocidal, filicidal, pestilential, megalomaniacal, sadomasochistic, capriciously malevolent bully.
So that's what you think of God?
Yeah.
That's what you think of God?
Yeah.
That's what you think of God?
Yeah.
Now that's a lot of hatred for a being that supposedly doesn't exist. Truly was a mouthful, and I find it strange when Ben asked him if that's what he thought of God. He didn't bat an eye when he responded with a yes. He was so overwhelmed with hatred that he forgot his role as an atheist, even if for a second. Now, most atheists would have taken the opportunity to reinforce God's non-existence. I know you can easily say that he read off the word fictional when referring to God in his rant, and yes, I may be overly critical, but the question was clear, and when Dawkins couldn't refer to his book, the answer was simply yes. Regardless of that, hatred of God is nowhere mentioned in the definition of atheist, which begs the question, is Dawkins, the father of modern atheism, a true atheist? Or is this a guise for a more sinister character beneath his already feminine, vampiristic appearance? I believe it's the latter. He's not an atheist. He's an anti-theist, a hater of God. Let's keep watching.
How about if people believed in a God of infinite lovingness and kindness and forgiveness and generosity, sort of like the modern-day God? Why spoil it for them? Why not just let them have their fun and enjoy it?
I mean, I don't want to spoil anything for anybody. I write a book, people can read it if they want to. I believe that it is a liberating thing to free yourself from primitive superstition.
So religion is a primitive superstition?
I think it is, yes.
So you believe it's liberating to tell people that there is no God?
I think a lot of people, when they give up God...
Give up God. Give up God. Give up God.
This man is a scholar, writer, intellect. Individuals like this don't throw words around haphazardly. In any other circumstance, you have every right to say I'm being overly critical, and that's the last time I defend myself. Dawkins used the words, give up God. It seems that when he doesn't have time to carefully write something, he can't help but somewhat be honest about his agenda. He didn't say disbelieve in God. He said give up God. I know you could say that it's the same thing, but it's not. Words gain their specific meaning from what all other words are not. To give up means to desist, abandon, to declare incurable or insoluble, to abandon oneself to a particular feeling, influence, or activity. It isn't about disbelieving. Dawkins doesn't disbelieve. He rejects what he knows to be true.
I think a lot of people, when they give up God, feel a great sense of release and freedom. I think a lot of people, when they give up God, feel a great sense of release and freedom.
Give up God, release, and freedom.
Why do you think that? I mean, what's your dad? You're a scientist. What's your dad?
I think, well, I've had a lot of letters saying that, and I've...
There are 8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins. How many letters have you had?
No, I haven't done that. That's quite true.
Most people get anxiety, fear, and negativity as they drift away from God. When Ben asked him what his proof was to support the relief, quote-unquote, relief people get when giving up God, he mumbled and fumbled like the buffoon that he is. Because that's what happens when you lie.
You're a scientist. What's your dad? You're a scientist. What's your dad? You're a scientist. You're a scientist. You're a scientist.
Well, I've had a lot of letters saying that, and I've...
There are 8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins. 8 billion people. You're a scientist. What's your dad? 8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins.
8 billion people in the world, Dr. Dawkins.
How many letters have you had?
No, I haven't done that. That's quite true.
Professor Dawkins seemed so convinced that God doesn't exist that I wondered if he would be willing to put a number on it.
Well, it's hard to put a figure on it, but I mean.
The guy got a few letters compared to 8 billion people, yet he feels he can speak for everyone. Who does this gay Dracula think he is?
Professor Dawkins seemed so convinced that God doesn't exist that I wondered if he would be willing to put a number on it.
Well, it's hard to put a figure on it, but I mean, I put it as something like, 99% against or something.
Well, how do you know it's 99%?
I don't.
Say it's not 97%.
No, I did. You asked me to put a figure on it, and I'm not comfortable putting a figure on it. Put it as something like, 99% against.
Well, how do you know it's 99%?
I don't.
Well, how do you know it's 99%?
I don't.
How do you know it's 99%?
I don't.
He only became uncomfortable when he was challenged on it, but that was perfect scientism. Pull an unverified number out of thin air.
But you couldn't put a number on it.
No, of course not. No, of course not. Put it as something like, 99% against, something like, 99% against, 99% against.
2 words, no integrity.
Quite far from 50%.
How do you know?
I don't know. I mean, I put an
Well,
argument
then who
in
did
the
create
book.
the heavens and the earth?
Why do you use the word who? You see, you immediately beg the question by using the word who.
Well, then how did it get created?
Well, by a very slow process.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started.
Well, how did it start?
Nobody knows how it started.
So nobody knows how it started, but we have this long elaborate theory called evolution that has no origin explanation. I know where to find out how it all started. It's called the Old Testament, aka the Injil, aka the Torah, not to be confused with the evil Talmud. Let's assume you don't believe anything in any of those books. There is no one on earth that can create a living thing from a non-living thing, and that's not for lack of trying, because believe me, they have tried. Many have tried, and many have failed.
It comes down to this. No matter how many molecules you can produce with early Earth conditions, plausible conditions, you're still nowhere near producing a living cell. And here's how I know. If I take a sterile test tube and I put in it a little bit of fluid with just the right salts, just the right balance of acidity and alkalinity, just the right temperature, the perfect solution for a living cell, and I put in it one living cell. This cell is alive. It has everything it needs for life. Now I take a sterile needle and I poke that cell, and all its stuff leaks out into this test tube. You have in this nice little test tube all the molecules you need for a living cell. Not just the pieces of the molecules, but the molecules themselves. And you cannot make a living cell out of them. You can't put Humpty Dumpty back together again. So what makes you think that a few amino acids dissolved in the ocean are going to give you a living cell? It's totally unrealistic. Totally unrealistic. Totally unrealistic.
Totally unrealistic. Totally